Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to Mr. B's first Summer Drawing Club live stream. I see a couple of you guys are already in there. It's good to see. So, again, you guys asked for it, so I'm giving it to you guys. This is our first, I guess you would call it, summer club, summer school, whatever you want to call it, but it's a summer edition of our drawing club. Because again, some of you guys were asking if we could continue this through the summer, and I had no problem with that because I was going to be drawing anyways. Yep, drop me a hello in the chat and let me know you're here. If there's something I can do for you, draw for you. If there's something you want to go over, I'll go over it for you, but I do have some stuff that I'm going to kind of just continue on what we were learning while we were in school. I hope everybody's summer's going really well. Again, I know it's been a weird year, right? We've had a lot of adjusting to do over the year, getting used to this distant learning stuff, but everyone, at least as far as I could see, did a really awesome job making that transition. So hopefully everyone's sort of relaxing at this point, because we definitely don't know what next year's going to look like quite yet. So, all right. I'm just looking at my notes here. If you see me looking down, I'm just looking at some of my notes so I know what we've gone over and what we can go over. All right. So I want to kind of start off with where we left off. And again, I'm just going to, some of you, if you remember this, it'll probably seem like, why is he doing this again? But I just want to make sure that we sort of remember some of the stuff that we were talking about before we went to break. So again, that's why I'm going to go over this stuff, because it was really good stuff, and we haven't seen each other in a while now, so in case you forgot, we'll go over it again, and then we'll get into some new stuff. And then moving forward, every Friday, we'll kind of, jump on a different topic. And like always, we'll sort of wrap up the live stream. I'll give you guys a whiteboard link, Whiteboard Fox, and you guys can go in there and draw. I don't necessarily have any sort of challenge today, or maybe I do. We'll kind of see how it goes. But again, I'm still getting notifications for this club in the Google Classroom. So if you do have some sort of request of something you want to go over or do, a technique that you want to sort of learn about, let me know, and I can try to fit it into the live stream. Because like I said, I'm still getting notifications for this particular classroom still. All my other classrooms I have them turned off, but this one I still have it going. All right, so I'm just going to jump right into it, and we'll get kind of going here. And like I said, we're going to start off with what we left off with last time. I think it's been a couple weeks since we went over anything with the club or any sort of live stream. So, a couple things here. I'm going to jump right into this. Let me make sure everything is ready to go. All right. And then I'm going to disappear for a while. So, let me scoot over here. Bye. And then I'll jump in and out as needed. All right. So, when we left off, we were talking about a couple different things, and I'm going to switch over to Photoshop. There's my canvas. We were talking about how to start drawing the body, and we were using the egg and the bean technique, if anybody remembers what that was. But basically, we were creating a torso, right? We remember the bean is just sort of, again, a bean. Let me bring this down here. It's too small. Okay, so again, the bean, it represents the body or the torso, and it was just something that looked like this. Right? And this was our center line here. And we had gave it some depth in there. But that was our torso. Right? Obviously this is the upper and this is the lower. And it was kind of a simple bean shape that we created, and it's a great habit to get into. You know, like I've been saying over all the live streams, simple shapes, always start with simple shapes. And this bean shape is just a great way to start off any sort of drawing, because, you know, as we talked about earlier, we want to get away from drawings that look sort of like this. Right? You can see this. It's just, there's nothing happening here. They're sort of straight up and down. Right? There's no action, there's no momentum, there's no flow. So again, with the bean shape, you can kind of take the bean shape and start twisting it like a bean here. And then you got your center line here kind of coming through. And you can start twisting it. It can kind of go out this way and go out this way, and you start getting some type of rhythm here, or some type of flow with that simple bean shape. Again, you can just practice this, and again, as you guys are sort of listening to me, I know some of you guys told me you sort of just listen as you guys draw, and that's fine. But try to do some of these shapes. I know, again, it sounds silly, especially when, you know, I look at some of your guys' drawings, and they're definitely awesome as far as your technique and your ability. But again, we always want to strive to get better. And as silly as this might seem, these bean exercises, they really help sort of you work through drawing in a more dynamic manner, and that's what you want. You want some flow, you want some movement, some fluidity, and you can work on the shadows here. I'm just putting in some shadows to give it some weight. Right? So that's the bean. This is, again, we talked about the bean, and then we moved on to the torso. So remember, and I'll just create another layer here. The torso. We kind of had this egg shape up at the top. Sort of looked like, see if I can find my notes here. Again, it looks like, I call it an egg. I know it doesn't really look all that much like an egg, but that's what I call it. But that's up at the top, right? And then you have the line down here, and then up at the top you have this line. And you want to start drawing these lines. Again, I was talking to some people, and even my daughter, and we were talking about, you know, the lines and not wanting to draw the lines, and you kind of, the lines help give your shapes some depth, and that's what you need, especially when you start drawing something moving, right? So this is, you know, the upper torso, or the rib cage, right? And this is hard, not flexible. So this is where your ribs are. Right? This is not flexible. Right? And then right below that is your pelvis. Again, you want to try to start drawing sort of in these dimensions, so you can give some shape to your characters and give them some motion and some fluidity. And start drawing those center lines so you know where the center lines are. Again, some of you guys seem really advanced as far as what you're drawing and what you can draw. And, you know, I know that I can draw fairly well, but I still use these techniques so I can visualize the depth of my characters and just how they're going to move. Right? I start off with these simple shapes. And again, so this is your upper torso or your rib cage. This is your pelvis. Right? Also hard. Not flexible. So we have the upper torso, which is your rib cage, and then your lower part of your torso, or your body, is your pelvis. These don't move. Right? So how does our body get through those range of motions? Right? We talked about this before, but how do you have all these dynamic poses, and you're twisting and you're turning and you're slouching down and you're coming up, and how do you have all those range of motion? It's your midsection, right? It's the stuff in between. Right? It's all the stuff in here. In between here, right? And I'm gonna get a different color here so you guys can actually see that. Let me grab, let's see, maybe a blue. But it's all this here. This is what gives your body the ability to move and stretch and turn and twist and do all that stuff that can really give your characters that motion. Right? And what does that motion do? It tells a story. That's what we're trying to do. So whenever we're drawing, we're telling a story. They might be little mini stories. You know, somebody's not feeling well, so they're hunched over. Like we did with the gestures. We're telling a story. Is someone sad? Are they happy? Are they strong? Are they weak? And then how are they moving? And that's what we can do when we learn these basic shapes for the body. Right? So again, you can even break that down even further. And I know, again, we've gone over this, but I'm gonna jump into some new stuff here in a minute. But just remember, if you can't get the egg shape or the pelvis, or you want to start even simpler, I even sometimes just do this. I'll just work with cylinders. And I know this is my upper body. Right? And I know this will be my center line, and my line will come down here. And then I know this will be my pelvis. And then I work with that. Right? Simple shapes. And then I know this is my midsection. Flexible. Right? That's not, but this is flexible. That's how your character is going to move, that midsection. All right? All this area here is how they're going to move. All right, so we'll jump on to something sort of new here, because I think we have the basic shape, which is this up here. All right, that's your basic shape, and I'm going to minimize that. I'm going to scale it down because I want to keep it for us to see. I'll move that up here. Maybe keep it a little bigger, just so we can kind of see that. And then I'm going to sort of start expanding on that, just building a character. And that's what we'll talk about today, just how do you build these different characters. So, and we're just going to focus on the upper body for this live stream. We'll kind of break things down like that, and then we'll talk about the lower body, and we'll talk about parts of the upper body. We'll get into hands and stuff like that. But let's just talk about the torso. So one of the big things that you have to first decide when you're creating a character is it going to be male or female? So how do we distinguish that with some of these sort of basic shapes and drawings? Well, let's jump into that here. All right, so you're going to be putting a vest on your character, and you'll understand in a minute. So this is what we usually start with. This shape. And again, this is sort of the rib cage up top, and we'll have the neck up here. Right? The midsection. And then the pelvis. So this is the pelvis here. Center line. I start drawing the circles just to give it some depth so I understand that my character's got this weight to it. Alright, so that's just your, what do they call it, the 3/4 base. This is just your base. This is like your building block. So that could be anybody at this point. At this point, that could be anybody. Right? So how do we start making it into a character? So there's two kinds of vests that you can give. Two kinds of vests that you're going to put on this character. You're going to have a vest that kind of slopes in like this. You have the arms here. And then it slopes in like that. And slopes in like this. That's one type of vest. Right? You can see the sloping motion here. Slopes in there, slopes in there, it slopes out, and it slopes out. That's your typical female. I say typical because, again, you can let your creativity run wild. It doesn't have to, when you end up doing your own characters, it doesn't have to fit these rules, but these are just typically how you can distinguish males from females. Now, on the other hand, the male vest or upper torso would kind of look something like this. It's got more rounded parts to it. Almost comes to almost like a triangle. Like this, and then the arms would go here. So you can see this kind of, the arrows slope down, and then you slope inward here. So you kind of have a female form, and you start building that back out, and then again the pelvis is here, and then this is the male. And again, you start building this out, following those lines. That's the male body. The shoulders are a little broader, and they slope down. And the way that you can look at this, again, is, I'll erase this here. With this base, this is going to be the base that you start with. You can either give it this jacket, right? Where you have the sloping going down and in, right? That would be female. So that could either go on your base, or again, your male, which everything kind of bows out a little bit. Just bows out. You got your arms here, the neck there, but everything kind of curves out. And these are the two jackets or vests. That's how I look at it. It's like you get to choose what vest, either this female or this male, that's going to go onto your body. Right? Let me grab another color here so you can see the difference. So again, your two vests here, female and male. And you just got to notice how the lines curve when you're drawing them. All right. So those are the two. I call them vests because they kind of look like vests, and that you would drop on top of your just normal base here, and then start going. And again, as you start building your characters, you can make those vests exaggerated even more. That you can make them smaller, bigger. But you always want to sort of start with a base for your character, whether it's going to be female or male. You just want to have sort of a base design for your characters. All right, so let's move on to the next part of this, because I think the one thing I wanted to go over too today, and I think we went over this, but I think it's worth going over again. And let me switch this off here. We'll add another layer. But shapes. We want to talk about shapes and what they mean. So, for instance, when we are looking at shapes, let's take a circle for instance. Typically, when we're drawing circles, that we're talking about shape language now. So there are three primary shapes. Squares, circles, and triangles. And each one of those communicate a different emotion for your characters. So again, as you build characters, these are the things you want to sort of concentrate on. When we draw circles, we're thinking of peace, softness, safety, kindness, safety, kindness, and I guess it's more of a feminine. It's more associated with femininity. So again, when we're designing characters, if your character is going to be a kind character, a peaceful character, you would start sort of building out that character probably more with circles than any other sort of shapes. Be a lot of circles. And I'm just kind of drawing here. Again, I don't know why I'm drawing a bunny rabbit, but I'm drawing a bunny rabbit. All right, but that would be the typical, lot of circles here. I just drew a whole bunch of circles here because I know as I'm starting to design my characters what I want them to communicate, which is kindness, softness, safety, peace. Now, squares. Again, squares, they sort of represent physicality, meaning being physical, being strong, strength, dependability. And I think I'm spelling most of this right. But strength is the biggest one. So again, if you're building a character, you know, that you want to be your strong character in your video game or your comic book or whatever, and you're saying, I want this character, whether it's male or female. And again, just because typically squares represent masculinity and circles represent femininity doesn't mean that you have to use circles for female characters and squares for male characters. You can switch that up. Matter of fact, I encourage you to do that. But again, if you're sort of using simple shapes and you're coming up with a character design for, let's say, your strong character, let me start up here a little higher, then you're going to use a lot of squares, right? So maybe this is squares for the chest, squares for the arms, a lot of squares when we talk about strength, a lot of squares and hard angles. So again, these are very basic sort of characters that I'm drawing, but you're using a lot of squares to convey a message, which is strength, physicality, dependability. Those are the things, again, you might not think that you are thinking those things when you look at these characters, but you are. You just, again, it's subconscious. And for those of you that don't know what that means, again, subconscious means is that you're taking in information and you're feeling something that you're not even aware that you're feeling. So a lot of art deals with the subconscious. So a lot of the times when you are creating characters or you're creating art, you, the artist, understand your intentions. You understand what sort of message you're trying to convey. And a lot of times the audience will get that message, but they won't necessarily understand why or how you did that. But understanding form, language, and shapes and the different things they communicate, you'll be able to get those reactions and responses that you want, specifically that you want. So that's why we study these things. And you also study them, and I've said this before, so as I give you guys these sort of rules, let's call them more guidelines, because a good artist knows the rules, can execute the rules or the guidelines, but they also know when to break those rules. Because if everybody's doing the same thing, if you always make your strong character, if everybody who's making characters makes their strong characters with squares, then somebody needs to come along at some point and maybe break that trend and be different and make their strong character with circles. So these guidelines that I'm showing you, these are the typical ways to approach characters. Doesn't mean that they're the only ways. And then finally, let me kind of make this a little smaller because I want to show you the final shape and then you guys can start drawing. But the final shape is, I don't know if anybody can guess the final shape. We have a circle, we have a square. What would be the final primary shape, do you think, anyways? And you might see it a lot, again, in cartoons, comic books, movies. Yeah, it's a triangle. Absolutely right. So that's the third sort of primary shape. Nice job, Sophia. And triangles. So again, circles, peace, softness, kindness, femininity. Squares are physicality, strength, masculinity. And then finally, the triangle. This is sort of your third shape. And as you are building torsos and you're building characters and even their faces, next live stream, what we'll do is we'll start building bodies and faces based off of these shapes, and you'll see the different things that are communicated just by choosing the different shapes. But we're just getting to know these shapes today. So Triangles, it's really not masculine or feminine, but it represents um, sharpness, obviously. Um, Movement is one that you'll hear a lot when people talk about triangles. But it's a deviation, right? Because it's neither masculine or feminine. So it's a deviation from both. So what does that mean? Well, a lot of times, if you notice when you read comics or you watch movies, a lot of the bad guys are made up of triangles because it's a deviation. And what that does is it makes people uncomfortable. The angles. So a lot of times, if you look at your comic books, and this is sort of, I guess this would be homework for anybody watching the live stream or the recording, is simply just if you're reading some books, some comics. I know I'm in the middle of some summer reading. I'm reading some really cool comic books. But if you're reading anything, if you're watching a movie or a cartoon, just notice the shape language. And you'll notice that a lot of the villains all have triangular shape language, right? Because it's a deviation. It's not feminine, it's not masculine, but it makes the viewer uncomfortable. And it represents this sort of severe, right? It represents not sever, but severe, right? Unstable. And then finally, dangerous. Usually things that are unstable are dangerous. So that's what the triangle represents. So again, if you're drawing, a bad guy, I'll try to draw something really quick. But if I were to draw a bad guy, maybe the bad guy, this is his jaw, and his eyes are even sort of angular like this, and maybe even his ears. You make them kind of angular like this. I'm just giving him some hair here. I don't know what I'm doing here. But the nose, right, would even have a triangle sort of angle to it. His clothes maybe that he's wearing would have a whole bunch of angles to it. So again, form language. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about these different shapes, because again, when you know the form language, when you know how to use it, you know when to break the rules and not use it. All right? Because a lot of times good artists, what they do is they subvert expectation, meaning that everybody expects the bad guy to have triangle shapes. Well, maybe in your comic or in your game or whatever it is you're designing, maybe you make the good guy the one with all the angular shapes, right? You subvert that, but you know the rules enough to know why people are going to respond to that, why people are going to think that's interesting. You'll be able to speak to that. Go, wow, that's a really interesting character. I don't know why I like that guy so much or that girl so much. You would be able to explain that. Well, typically the bad guys usually have the triangle form language, and so I made the good guy with that, and I made it really interesting, and they'll probably, you'll probably bore them to death, and they'll fall asleep. They'll go, I don't know anything about that. I just know it's cool. And then you've done your job. So again, knowing this stuff is good, and following it and practicing it is good, but also knowing when to not follow it is also good, if that makes sense. All right, so I think we'll stop right there. That's a good start to our summer streams. We'll call them summer streams. We kind of did a little bit of a review at the beginning. Again, with the shapes and the forms of how to create torsos, because that is one of the biggest challenges that I faced when I really started sort of taking my drawing to the next level. Is my drawings were all very stiff. They all sort of looked like they looked like this here. Just straight up and down. Straight up and down. Where the arms kind of were by the side, the legs were down, and the person was looking right at the camera. And I got really good at that. I did. I got really good at it with the details, with everything. But then when it came to actually telling a story, this right here, straight up and down, and looking right at the camera, that's not much of a story. That's sort of a filler. So to take it to the next level, and again, it was a challenge for me, is to start with these bean shapes and creating some type of flow or dynamic movement. And then from the beans, I started drawing these torso shapes. And then from the torso shapes, I started learning about different shape language so that I can start drawing on top of those shapes and actually communicating things about my characters. So not only could I make my characters move and tell a story, you know, they're running, they're jumping, they're hiding, they're sad, they're mad, they're angry, but I could also start communicating through the way that I was drawing them, whether they had a lot of circles, squares, or triangles. All right, that is Mr. B's lesson for today. We've got about 20 minutes left. I am going to go into the Google Classroom right now. And again, thank you, Sophia. I am going to put a Whiteboard Fox link in there. And you guys can draw. I would say it's a free draw. I would definitely love to see if you guys could actually create some characters using those three basic shapes. Just create them. I mean, just give your character a name. Tell me if they're good or bad, or tell me what you're trying to communicate with the characters you're going to create here. And let's practice that. You're not going to get it the first couple times. But I have just put the link, the whiteboard link in. All right. So the whiteboard link is in the classroom now. So if you click on the whiteboard link, you will see the Whiteboard Fox that we can all jump in and start using. So let's go ahead and do that. And I want to get it on screen for you guys here. There we go. Let's bring this down here. Let's put it under behind me. Okay, there we go. All right, so the Whiteboard Fox link is there. You guys can click on that. It'll bring you in here. And again, we can just kind of do some free drawing. What I would like to do, honestly, I would love for you guys to take some of those basic shapes, a circle, a square, and a triangle, and maybe just create a character. I mean, seriously, within this 20 minutes, see if you can create a character. And maybe don't even tell me your character or what you're trying to communicate. Let me guess. But I'm going to draw two. I'm going to switch my color to green. If you guys, we did have that suggestion before about switching colors, and it was a great suggestion. If you guys, everybody wants to use a different color, you can do that as well. I'm going to kind of go bye-bye again so you guys don't have to stare at me while I draw. But I am going to try to draw something here. Let's see. Let's see what I can try to draw. And let's put some music on. Awesome work so far, guys. Really cool stuff. Just moving stuff around so I can see what you guys are doing. Very cool. I'm just going through the different shapes here myself and seeing what I can draw. So I've got my square shape. Definitely looks like a big tough guy. Now I'm trying to maybe do this little, maybe like a grandma shape. I don't know what this is. But just a lot of soft edges. All circles. Got the hair here. My hair definitely needs some work here. Just got a little curl up here. Let's put that. So this is circle. Very cool. We'll do triangle now. Let's see. It's got a little bit of a head here. Give him some funky hair. There's my triangle. Very cool. Alrighty, gang, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. You guys can keep drawing. Again, awesome job. Just the ending of these live streams is usually my favorite part of these live streams, just watching you guys draw and us drawing together. Definitely, we might have to have some guest teachers on one of these live streams. Maybe one of you guys can volunteer to give a lesson on your particular style or technique that you want to share with the class, because I would definitely be in the audience for that and following along, because I would want to learn some tips and tricks from you guys. All right, so with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. Again, I will be back here again next Friday at 1 p.m. So we'll do this all summer. If for any reason I can't make one of the live streams, I will definitely let you know in the classroom that we'll postpone it or we'll have it on another day other than Friday. But I will let you know ahead of time. I won't just not do a live stream. So again, awesome job. Have a great rest of your day. Have an awesome weekend, guys. Keep practicing. And as always, if you guys are sketching stuff and you want to share it with me or with everybody in the club, go ahead and post that into the Google Classroom Mr. B's Virtual Drawing Club stream so we can all see what you guys are doing this summer. I can't wait to see you guys next year. Until next Friday, guys. Bye.